This is a tale of the future. For centuries, the Sol hegemon has ruled uncontested the greatest swath of human space in the galaxy. Earth is long abandoned, its great cities reduced to overgrown ruins as mankind has sought new homes and new dominions amongst the stars. But now the beating heart of the Sol hegemon has been convulsed by revolution. The rebels claim they fight for freedom and equality, but are they truly any better than those whom they name oppressor? But on the fringe of human space, worlds remain untouched by war and revolt. It is to this region that the crew of the Babylon Rocker have come, seeking peace and escape, both from the chaos of revolution and the dark specters of the past. On the fringe, there is hope. On the fringe is freedom and light and opportunity. But with such freedoms and opportunities come many dangers, some of the future, others of the past that they seek to avoid. Such is the nature of the wild edge of human space. There lies adventure. There goes Babylon Rocker. Last time, we saw the Gozoku consolidate its grip on power, deal with the headache that was Matsu Itagi, and show the first dissension among the leadership in the aftermath of the Winter Court of 415. No one could have known it at the time, but the Gozoku had only 20 years left of life. Though you never would have thought it. Internal disputes aside, the Gozoku's grip on power seemed as firm as ever. They had agents and sympathizers all throughout the Empire. Well, all save one place, the lands of the Dragon Clan. The clan champion, Togashi Hikaru, may have permitted the Gozoku to go through with its plans and strip the Emperor of all power, but apparently that didn't extend to just letting them spy on his own people. Multiple times the Gozoku tried to send agents to infiltrate Dragonlands, and they were never heard from again. Those they sent to find out what had happened to them disappeared as well. But then again, the Gozoku would have had reason not to think too much of the Dragon Clan. After all, like always, they preferred to study enlightenment rather than involve themselves in the affairs of the Empire. Neutrality was their default stance, so at least they didn't have to worry about interference. Still, the cracks in the alliance that had been opened by the Winter Court of 415 continued to grow, and the three member clans, the Phoenix, the Crane, and the Scorpion, became increasingly mistrustful of one another. In 426, one of its founding members, Bayushi Atsuki, chose to retire from his position as clan champion of the Scorpion, passing the office on to his daughter, Bayushi Minoko. This, of course, did not mean retirement from the Gozoku, as he would remain an active leader in that movement for the remaining years of its existence. However, the beginning of Minoko's tenure as clan champion shows the beginning of fractures not just within the Gozoku, but within the Scorpion clan itself. Those few that had opposed the Gozoku at all, like Junzen, Atsuki's cousin, were either out of the way or dead. But there was now a growing split within the clan between those that favored reconciliation with the other two members of the conspiracy, the Crane and Phoenix clans, and those, like the new clan champion, that opposed that. It seems that Minoko had the attitude of anyone that favored reconciliation should be disgraced or exiled from the clan. This does suggest, however, that her grip on the clan wasn't nearly as strong as her father's had been, as certainly, apart from Junzen, no one had been able to successfully challenge Atsuki's authority. Not that this meant much to the powerless Emperor Kusada. Stripped of any real authority, acting only as the mouthpiece of his puppet masters, there was very little the Emperor could do apart from commissioning the construction of imperial water gardens and fostering religion within the empire. His most noteworthy endeavor in this regard was to use imperial funds to pay for 24 new temples, all situated in places where Shinsei, the little sage himself, was said to have performed some great holy act. But as the shrines were constructed, the Emperor hit upon an idea that might get him out of his powerless predicament. The Brotherhood of Shinsei, the principal religious organization of the Empire, would surely be grateful to him for all his many works on behalf of their faith. What if he could use that debt to his advantage? What if he employed the Brotherhood of Shinsei as spies? After all, Who would suspect a monk of duplicity? Unfortunately, the plan went about as well as you might expect. The Gozoku very quickly uncovered these monk spies in the Emperor's service and killed them all. Each one was publicly executed as a traitor to the Empire. To really drive the point home, they also burned down 3 monasteries of Sohei, warrior monks that had been in the employ of the Emperor as well. Perhaps the Gozoku thought that this public execution would be a salutary lesson to anyone who would oppose them. But in fact, this actually began to turn people against the Gozoku. Most commoners obviously don't know politics. Indeed, most low-ranking samurai probably don't understand politics. But as long as prosperity continued and there were no famines or other natural disasters, they were willing to go along with this and accept things as they were. But most people in the empire did understand religion, and the execution of holy men really soured their opinion on what was going on in the capital, even if most of them didn't grasp the nature of who really wielded power in the Emerald Empire. Many consider this PI blunder on the part of the Gozoku as the real beginning of the end for them, as even members of the conspiracy, like the wealthy and influential Otomo Reiju, began to turn their back on the Gozoku leadership. But before we can get to the downfall of the Gozoku, there is one last other noteworthy event to consider: the Mantis Clan. If you recall both the Minor Clan Omnibus and the Reign of Genji videos that I did much earlier, the Mantis Clan are the oldest minor clan in the Empire, technically. Founded in the year 80 by Kaimetsuo, the son of the Crab Clan champion and his lion wife. By this point, the clan was almost 4 centuries old. However, in all that time, they'd never been officially recognized by the Chrysanthemum throne. That all changed in 429 when the clan champion, a man known only as Gusai, went to the capital and presented himself to Emperor Kusada. Just as the Crab Clan is famous for its lack of regard for courtesy and etiquette, the Mantis are equally famed for disregarding authority. Gusai certainly embodied this aspect of his clan, for he had the brass balls to challenge the Emperor to a battle of wits. It turned out to be a very unusual battle of wits, for Gusai then went up to the throne and held his blade to the Emperor's throat. He then said to the Emperor, "Speech and action are the basis of governing. They can move heaven and earth, but they are not as strong as steel." Thus, Gusai claimed victory in this contest of wits. Apparently the idea being that for all the power of the Emperor's decree, it was meaningless when there was a sword involved. Apparently, the Emperor was more impressed than offended by Gusai's temerity, for he decided to finally, officially acknowledge the Mantis as a minor clan, and even bestow Gusai's name upon the ruling family. Thus, at last, the Mantis Clan achieved recognition, and its daimyo got a name. However, Kusada was still the Emperor and was determined to have the last word in the matter, and so he ordered Gusai to be executed for literally holding a sword to his throat. Leadership of the Mantis Clan therefore passed on to Gusai's son, Gusai Mori. But now at last we come to it: how the Gozoku finally fell. As we've just seen, Emperor Kusada's own attempt to break free of his shackles had failed miserably. And what's more, his 3 eldest sons were all fostered to the member clans of the Gozoku, ensuring that they would essentially be little more than their puppets, just as he had been. But then in 432, for weird esoteric reasons that only Dragon Clan champions ever seemed to understand, Togashi Hikaru decided to take action. Through dragon diplomats at the imperial court, he persuaded the Emperor Kusada to put up another of his children for fostering, his eldest daughter, Yugozo Hime. And specifically, she was to foster with the Lion Clan. Okay, I need to stop for a moment and explain something. I really like the Gozoku arc. It's one of my favorite bits of lore in the Legend of the Five Rings canon. But there's always been this big problem that's always annoyed me with how it ends. Why would the Gozoku permit this? The fostering of Yugozo Hime to the Lion Clan. L5R is holy fantasy. And it's that kind of fantasy where women can have the same kind of power as men can. There have been multiple female daimyos and even clan champions. We even have families like the Matsu and the Centipede clan that are explicitly matriarchal. So why would the Gozoku allow a potential heir to the throne, even if she's not the first in line, slip through their fingers like this? And the lion, of all clans, why the one that is so insanely loyal to the Imperial line that, without going into spoilers, twice in their history, it nearly destroyed itself because of that insane loyalty to the bloodline and the throne? The clan that more than any other is going to pound into her young royal skull the importance of Hantei Imperial supremacy. I can understand them letting her foster with one of the minor clans, or even maybe the crab, but not the lion. But anyway, that's what happened. Yugozo Hime fostered with the lion clan, and partly thanks to some encouragement from Togashi Hikaru, they did indeed teach her in the ways of being a warrior and the idea of Hantei Imperial supremacy, that the emperor should be the ruler of the empire, not a secret cabal of clans. There's no saying of who the Lion Clan champion was at the time, but again, my personal headcanon would be Akodo Mitsuyagi, the father of the next named clan champion, Akodo Kurojin. Yugozo Hime and Kurojin were of similar age and became close friends. Rumors persisted afterwards that they were far more than that, though this was never confirmed. But at last came the fateful year of 435. Emperor Kusada was dead. Already prepared for this eventuality, the Gozoku brought in his eldest son, Hantei Sojiro. Having fostered with the Phoenix clan, this was the first time that he had seen the capital in 20 years. But then, just as Sojiro was about to be proclaimed Emperor of Rokugan, the doors to the throne room banged open and in strode two heavily armed squads of samurai. One in the earth tones of the Lion Clan, the other in the gold-trimmed green of the dragon. And at their head was Hantei Yugozo Hime. It seemed that Hikaru, driven by whatever strange things motivate Dragon Clan champions, was willing to do more than just subtly manipulate things to restore the Hantei line to power. Indeed, in the months before Sojiro's coronation, Yugozo Hime secretly went to the Dragon Clan and received Hikaru's affirmation of loyalty and pledge of support for her claim. Now, the sources say that Yugozo Hime was born in 424, but that would mean she would only be 11 on the day of Sojiro's coronation, and given that he'd fostered 20 years with the Phoenix, the man would at least be close to 30. Personally, I reject this as a writing mistake by the people who wrote the storyline, because Yugozo Hime, in front of the entire court, stepped forward and challenged her eldest brother to a duel. And there is simply no way that a 30-year-old man would lose to an 11-year-old. Yugozo Hime had spent 3 years training to be a warrior. Sojiro had spent his entire life being raised to be a puppet. Ignoring the absurd age disparity, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out who won that duel. And so, as the stunned court looked on, Yugozo Hime stepped over Sojiro's body and placed herself upon the chrysanthemum throne as the 7th ruler of the Emerald Empire and its first Empress. Caught completely flat-footed by this sudden reversal, the Gozoku was powerless to stop her. She hadn't just brought bodyguards, she'd brought armies, and Otosan Uchi was completely surrounded by the armies of the Lion and the Dragon Clan. With an Empress able to successfully stand up to the Gozoku and 2 great clans backing her, all those who opposed the Gozoku, and those opportunists who simply saw the way the winds were blowing, came out in opposition, and so the conspiracy very quickly collapsed. Countless figures of prominence among the Gozoku were either forcibly retired or challenged to duels to the death, which most of them lost. Crane champion and Emerald champion Doji Raigu and retired Scorpion champion Bayushi Atsuki were arrested and executed. Shiba Gaiju Shiko was spared, but only on the condition that he help the Empress undo all that he had done. Gaiju Shiko was a scribe and official, not a warrior, and certainly not a particularly brave man, for he immediately capitulated and would spend the rest of his life destroying that which he had helped to create. There was one final attempt to oppose the turning of the tide. Bayushi Minoko, Scorpion champion and daughter of Atsuki, attempted to raise a rebellion against the new Empress in support of her brother, Hantei Kentaro, who was still being fostered with them and thus a loyal Gozoku puppet. But Minoko had made several enemies among her clan during her brief stint as its leader, and now those enemies rallied around the resurgent Bayushi Junzen. returning in triumph from his glorified exile to the border. Minoko was killed, and the attempted rebellion was stopped almost before it could begin. For his loyalty to the throne, the Empress recognized Bayushi Junzen as the new Scorpion Clan champion. Many across the empire celebrated the final restoration of rightful power to the imperial family. Among those were Seppun Gohoru, the Emerald Magistrate who had battled Gozoku corruption in Ryoko Owari. A few years after Yugozo Hime's accession to the throne, he would retire and join the Brotherhood of Shinsei. Naturally, those many surviving Ronin who had been unjustly ousted from their rightful place by the Gozoku at the beginning of its reign were restored, including Daidoji Nobuso, the first loyalist to discover the Gozoku conspiracy, and Matsu Mochiko, eldest sister of the late Matsu Itagi. The former would serve the new Empress as personal spy master, while the latter was restored to leadership of the Matsu family, and later would succeed the dead Doji Raigu as the new Emerald Champion. And thus, at last, after 40 years in control of the empire, the reign of the Gozoku was over.